My words can kill. Whatever I say comes true. When I was 8, my cruel adoptive father kicked me into an icy river. I glared at him and said furiously, "You'll drown if you go into water." The next day, he drowned in a stinking ditch, where the water barely reached his knees. After realizing I could really kill people, I was so scared. I stopped talking and became a mute. A year ago, I was taken back to the Shaw family, in order to stay with the family that I'd finally found. After all these years, I absolutely refused to speak. But one day, after Jackie Shaw took a sip of the drink I brought him, he suddenly convulsed and fell to the floor, his face turning purple. A maid screamed in terror. "There's peanut powder in the drink." Before I could even say anything, "Might win," Sister Violet kicked the coffee table, grabbed my hair, and pressed me down hard onto the broken glass shards. "You know Jackie is severely allergic to peanuts. How could you poison him?" After Mom gave Jackie an emergency injection, she turned around and slapped me hard. "I can't believe I gave birth to a malicious monster like you." Dad's face was ashen. He splashed boiling tea all over me. "You heartless, vicious, and great. I can't believe you tried to kill Jackie out of jealousy." Boiling water mixed with blood dripped down my face, and I clenched my teeth tightly. They had no idea that if I truly wanted him dead, I wouldn't even need to poison him. I just had to speak. Like this. I slowly looked up at Jackie, and my lips moved. It wasn't me. I opened my mouth to speak, but only a hoarse sound emerged. Since returning to the Shaw family a year ago, I was very careful not to say anything, fearing that one wrong word would hurt this precious family I'd finally found. I still remember the day I returned home. Dad cooked barbecue ribs for me. Mom held my hand, promising I would never suffer again. My sister, who now seemed to want to crush my bones, once fought tooth and nail against bullies who mocked me at school. That was the only ray of light I clung to in the endless darkness of my life. Therefore, I gritted my teeth and willingly became invisible. But now that light had turned into a blade that cut deep into my heart. "You still won't admit it. You were the only one who went into the kitchen. If it wasn't you who poisoned him, who else could it be?" Violet bellowed as she bent down, grabbed the pure silver amulet I wore on my neck, and yanked it off forcefully. The silver chain left a bloody mark on my neck. The amulet was something Mom had begged for, from a fortune teller up in the mountains. Last year, on my birthday, she had to climb 399 steps to get there. She said, "The amulet was a good minus luck charm that would keep me safe. Don't touch my amulet." I struggled to grab it back. Violet kicked me hard in the chest, knocking me over. She turned and shoved the amulet into Jackie's hands, who had recovered a little by now. "Letting you wear this is an insult to the gods. Only a pure, innocent boy like Jackie deserves to wear it." Weakly leaning in Mom's embrace, Jackie cried bitterly, yet he tightly held onto the amulet that was originally mine. "Dad, Mom, don't blame Henry." Cough, cough. "He suffered a lot over the years, so it's understandable if he feels jealous. If it makes him feel better, I wouldn't mind giving up my life." The more Jackie spoke, the more disgusted my parents looked at me. Mom hugged Jackie tightly while glaring at me angrily. "See? Your little brother is defending you, even though he almost died, and you still wouldn't admit your mistake. Jackie has always been a kind boy. He wouldn't hurt a fly. There's no way he would risk his life to frame you." Dad pointed at the door with a cold face. "Throw him into the storeroom in the backyard. Lock him up for 3 days so that he'll learn. We don't tolerate malice in this family." I was locked in a storeroom with no windows. It was freezing and I only had a wet shirt on. Outside, just beyond the wall, the living room was brightly lit. The comforting voice of the family doctor and Mom's scared sobs pierced my ears like poison needles. Late at night, the locked storeroom door clicked open. Jackie, dressed in a thick down jacket and holding a flashlight, looked down at me, who was stiff from the cold. "Geez, Henry, why are you lying on the floor like a stray dog?" He had completely shed his weak and pitiful facade from earlier, his eyes gleaming with triumph. "Do you want to know who put the peanut powder in the drink?" He squatted down, shining the flashlight directly into my eyes. "It was me. Just wanted to see who's more important to Dad, Mom and Violet. You, their biological son and brother, or me, who is adopted. Guess what? Even though you're related by blood in their eyes, you're not even fit to carry my shoes." My lips were purple from the cold. I glared at him, not saying a word. The last shred of hope I had for the Shaw family crumbled into dust. Seeing I wasn't speaking, Jackie lost interest in taunting me. He chuckled coldly and pulled out a sharp fruit knife from his pocket. "Since you won't talk, let's do something more interesting. If Mom and Dad think you stabbed me in anger, would they throw you in jail, or kill you on the spot." He raised the knife and cut a deep gash on his arm without hesitation. The moment the blood gushed out, he threw the bloody knife next to me and let out a horrifying scream. Henry, what are you doing? I only came to check on you. Why are you trying to kill me?" As soon as he screamed, the storeroom door was kicked open with a bang. Violet rushed in, followed by my parents. They were met with a gruesome sight. There was blood everywhere, and Jackie was trembling on the floor. "Jackie!" Violet cried out. She frantically rushed over to cover his wound with her coat, tears welling up in her eyes. Mom saw the knife at my feet and screamed. She ran to me and kicked me hard on the chest. "You animal! You really are an animal! Jackie secretly came to check on you, even though he's injured. But you stabbed him." The kick knocked me against the wall, and my vision turned dark. I struggled to breathe. Jackie leaned against Violet, gasping in pain, but still desperately held onto Mom's hand. "Mom, don't hit Henry. It's my fault for coming here, even though I knew he hated me." Those words added more fuel to the fire. Dad's face turned livid with rage, and his hand trembled violently as he pointed at me. "Cruel and unrepentant. You're completely hopeless. Why do we bring back a cold, blooded monster like you?" Violet helped Jackie up, and before leaving she looked at me with disgust, as if I were rash. "Jackie kindly came to check on you, but you repaid his kindness with evil. You're beyond saving." They hurried away, surrounding Jackie, their faces filled with grief. The storeroom door was slammed shut and locked again. 3 days later, the door finally opened. Bodyguards dragged me out like I was a corpse and threw me into the brightly lit mansion living room. Today, the Schaff family was holding a party to celebrate Jackie's recovery, and the living room was filled with our relatives. Dad stood at the top of the stairs, pointing at me on the floor as he loudly declared to everyone, "Dear relatives, please be my witness. This boy our Schaff and Lay brought back is completely evil to snatch the family fortune. Not only did he poison Jackie with peanut powder, he even tried to stab Jackie in the storeroom a few days ago." Mom held Jackie's arm, which was wrapped in thick bandages, her eyes swelling with tears. If Violet hadn't taken swift actions, Jackie might have lost his life. "We cannot keep such a venomous snake in the house." The guests looked disgusted, pointing at me and whispering, "That's what happens when you grow up poor. It's too late to change him. How could he do that to Jackie? Jackie is such a good kid. Call the cops on him." Violet stepped on my shoulder and flung an agreement to sever ties onto my face. "Sign it. Then, in front of everyone, confess your wrongdoings and apologize to Jackie on your knees. After you sign, scam back to the countryside where you came from. Not a penny of the Shaw family's money will you take with you." I looked up at them, shaking violently from the cold. "I told you I didn't poison him, and I didn't stab him." My voice was hoarse and cracked like a worn-out fellow. "He poisoned Jackie." Suddenly a young maid burst out from the crowd.
"It was the maid who accused me that day."
But at that moment Mary, the maid who usually cleaned the backyard, pushed through the crowd and got on her knees. "Sir, ma'am, Henry didn't do it. That day, I was cleaning outside the kitchen, and I saw Jackie pour a pack of powder into the drink. With my own eyes." The hall instantly fell silent. Jackie's face hardened for a moment, but he quickly hid behind Mom, shivering again. Fury flashed in Violet's eyes. She ran over and kicked Mary hard in the chest. Mary, who was quite old, fell to the floor and couldn't get up for a while, blood trickling from her mouth. "Old hag, what kind of nonsense are you spouting? How much did Henry bribe you to accuse Jackie?" Dad's expression darkened as he waved the bodyguards over. "You insolent dog. Drag her to the courtyard and give her a good beating. After that, throw her out." Several strong men went up to Mary, grabbed her by the hair, and dragged her out. She screamed in pain, only to receive punches and kicks in response. Mary was beaten bloody for speaking up for me and telling the truth, seeing that I could no longer keep the blood in my chest down. And I coughed it up. In order to stay in this so-called family, I pretended to be mute, enduring everything silently. But because of that, an innocent person was trampled on to protect a liar. "Stop hitting her." I struggled to get up, but Jackie was quicker.
He knelt on the floor sobbing. "Dad."
"Mom, don't be angry. It's all my fault. Henry has gone through a lot, so it's only natural for him to hate me." Mary only lied for him out of pity. "Please take back the agreement. I'll move out of the mansion tomorrow and give the position back to Henry, as long as he doesn't poison me again." Mom was heartbroken. She glared at me fiercely. "Look at your brother. Look how much he's willing to sacrifice for you." Violet violently grabbed my collar, lifted me up and threw me hard onto the coffee table. The edge of the glass table hit my forehead, and warm blood trickled into my eyes. Will you sign it or not? If you won't, I'll break your hands. Her eyes were filled with violence. Dad looked down at me coldly, as if I were his enemy. I don't have a son like you. If you don't confess your crimes, you're not leaving through that door. Pain and coldness spread all over my body. Staring at my 3 blood relatives, my heart was completely numb. They didn't care about the truth. They were already convinced I was guilty. I lowered my gaze, slowly swallowed the blood in my mouth, and grinned. I lifted my head, my gaze passing over Violet and landing on Jackie's tear-minus, strict face. Fine. I confess. I unleashed my voice, and it was clear. I put the peanut powder in the drink and stabbed Jackie in the storeroom. The hall fell silent, and a trace of undisguised joy flickered in Jackie's eyes. Violet snorted. Finally, you admit it. Now, apologize to Jackie. On your knees. I ignored her. She had no idea that if I truly wanted him dead, I wouldn't even need to poison him.
I just had to speak.
Like this. I slowly looked up at Jackie, and my lips moved. I lifted my head, my eyes locking onto Jackie's pale, smug face.
The blood
Dripped down my forehead, stinging my left eye, but I didn't blink. The entire banquet hall was dead silent, waiting for my humiliated surrender. Violet held her foot over my shoulder, ready to press down harder. My father stood at the top of the stairs, a figure of icy judgment. My mother stroked Jackie's hair with sickening tenderness. They thought they had won. They thought they had finally crushed the dirty, mute stray they brought in from the gutter. They had no idea that the muted silence they hated so much was the only thing
keeping them alive.
Jackie, I whispered. My voice was raspy, dry as dead leaves, but it cut through the room like a silver blade. Jackie's smile faltered slightly.
What?
Henry, just sign the paper. You said you wouldn't mind giving up your life for me. I said, every syllable, deliberate, heavy, and resonant with an ancient, absolute weight. You said you were willing to die if it made me feel better. So let it be. The ambient temperature in the grand hall plummeted. The crystal chandeliers overhead began to hum, a high-pitched vibration that made the champagne glasses on the tables crack. What nonsensical trash are you muttering? Violet screamed, raising her foot to kick my face. Shut up. Freeze, I said. Violet's foot stopped an inch from my eye. She froze in midair, her body locking up as if encased in concrete. Her eyes widened in sheer terror as she realized she couldn't move a single muscle, her limbs suspended awkwardly against gravity. Violet, what are you doing? Kick him. My father barked from the stairs. She couldn't answer. She couldn't even blink. I slowly stood up, pushing myself off the glass-littered floor. The cuts on my palms stopped bleeding. I turned my eyes toward Jackie. Jackie suddenly gasped. He grabbed his throat with both hands, his eyes bulging out of their sockets. His skin, previously smooth and pale, began to break out into violent red hives. His lips swelled to 3 times their size in seconds. Ack. HHH. Mom. Jackie choked out, falling off the sofa and writhing on the Persian rug. Jackie. Oh my God, Jackie, my mother shrieked, dropping to her knees beside him. What's happening to him? He hasn't eaten anything. Every lie you spoke, I continued softly, walking toward him step by step, will carve a gash upon your flesh, double the depth of the knife you used on yourself.
Slash.
A jagged cut tore open across Jackie's right forearm through his thick wool sweater. Blood sprayed onto my mother's face.
Slash.
Another tear ripped across his shoulder, then his chest. He screamed a high, shrill sound of pure agony as invisible blades sliced into his body, matching the exact locations where he had claimed I stabbed him, but twice as deep. Stop it. Make it stop, my mother wailed, trying to press her hands over his bleeding arms, but the blood spurted through her fingers. Call an ambulance. Someone call an ambulance. The guests backpedaled in horror, spilling wine, knocking over chairs, clawing at the doors to escape. The mansion was no longer a party, it was a slaughterhouse of unnatural terror. My father ran down the stairs, his face white as ash, pointing a trembling finger at me. You devil. What kind of witchcraft are you doing to my
So?
I didn't answer him. I walked past them, my shoes crunching on the broken crystal glass. My target wasn't in this room anymore. Outside in the courtyard, rain was beginning to fall, mixing with the dark, heavy clouds above. I pushed open the double oak doors and stepped out onto the
porch.
In the mud of the garden, 3 large bodyguards were raining kicks down on old
Mary.
She lay curled in a fetal position, her gray hair soaked in blood and mud, her weak groans fading into the sound of the rain. "Stop," I called out. The bodyguards ignored me, one of them raising a heavy leather boot to stomp on her ribs. "Break your own legs," I said. A sickening sound of splintering bone echoed through the courtyard. Crack, crack,
Crack.
all 3 bodyguards collapsed instantly into the mud, shrieking in agony as their thighs bent backward at impossible, unnatural angles. They rolled in the dirt, clawing at their legs, completely broken. I knelt beside Mary. She looked up at me with her one unswollen eye, her breath coming in shallow, wet rattles. "Young master?" she whispered through blood-stained teeth. "Run, get away from this evil place." A lump formed in my throat. This woman, a simple domestic worker who barely knew me, had sacrificed her bones and blood for a truth no one else wanted to hear. "You won't die, Mary," I whispered, reaching out to gently touch her bloodied hair. "Your wounds will close. Your pain will vanish. You will live a long, peaceful life." As the words left my tongue, a strange, warm light rippled over her body.
The
Deep bruises on her skin faded. The fractured ribs snapped back into place under her wet uniform. Her ragged breathing smoothed out into a deep, healthy rhythm. Within 10 seconds, Mary sat up in the mud, staring at her own unblemished hands. In absolute shock. I don't hurt anymore," she stammered, looking at me with awe and fear. "Go to the gate, Mary," I said softly, helping her up. "Wait for me outside.
no.
One in this house will ever hurt you again." She nodded frantically and stumbled toward the main iron gates, which swung open automatically at my unspoken command. Behind me, heavy footsteps rushed out onto the patio. It was my father, holding a heavy iron poker from the fireplace, his face distorted by sheer rage and madness. Behind him, my mother dragged Jackie, who was barely breathing, his body drenched in blood and covered in hives. Violet walked stiffly behind them, her jaw trembling, having finally regained control of her limbs after my command wore off. "Monster," my father roared, raising the iron poker over his head. "I don't care what demon you sold your soul to. I will kill you myself today." He swung the iron bar down toward my head with all his strength. I didn't dodge. I didn't even raise my arm. "Melt," I said. The white-hot iron bar instantly turned into liquid slag in his hands. The molten metal splashed over his expensive leather shoes and trousers. My father screamed as the blistering liquid burned straight through his clothes and seared into his skin. He dropped the handle, falling to his knees, clutching his ruined
feet.
My mother dropped to her knees, crying hysterically. Henry, please.
He's
Your father, Jackie, is your brother. What happened to you? Why are you doing this to your own family?" "Family?" I turned around slowly, looking at the 3 of them. "A year ago, when I came back, I thought I finally had a home," I said, my voice echoing like thunder across the dark courtyard. "Dad cooked ribs for me.
Mom
Promised I'd never suffer again. Violet promised to protect me. And I was so afraid of ruining that, so terrified that my cursed voice would bring misfortune to you, that I sealed my lips. I bit my tongue until it bled every single day just to keep you safe." I stepped closer to my mother. She flinched back, pulling Jackie's bleeding body behind her. "Do you know why I had that silver amulet around my neck, Mom?" I asked softly. My mother swallowed hard, her voice shaking. I climbed 399 steps up the mountain. The holy monk gave it to me for your protection." "No," I laughed, a cold, hollow sound that gave them goosebumps. "You didn't listen to what the monk actually told you, did you? You only heard what you wanted to hear." My mother froze. "The monk didn't give you that silver amulet to protect me from the world." I leaned down, staring directly into her tear-filled eyes. "He gave it to you to protect the world from me. It was a seal, a binding curse to quiet my tongue so long as it rested against my skin." My mother's face drained of all color. "And what did your precious, innocent Jackie do?" I looked over at Jackie, who was shivering, his eyes full of animalistic dread. "He begged for it. And Violet ripped it off my neck with her bare hands to give it to him." My gaze drifted to Violet. She took 2 steps back, bumping against the marble pillar of the porch. By ripping off that chain, I whispered, you shattered the only thing holding me back. You unsealed the monster yourselves. Silence fell over the courtyard, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the sound of falling rain. My father groveled in the mud, clutching his burned feet, staring at me in utter disbelief. No, no, that's impossible. You're lying.
You're just a
Filthy, uneducated brat. Am I? I raised my hand and pointed a finger at the sky above the Shaw mansion. Lightning, I commanded.
boom.
A deafening crack of thunder shattered the heavens. A jagged bolt of blinding white lightning shot down from the dark clouds, slamming directly into the roof of the mansion's main tower. The stone structure exploded into dust and flying embers. Flames burst out from the top floor, raining fire down into the
Courtyard.
The shockwave knocked my father, mother, and Violet flat onto their faces. They screamed in sheer horror, scrambling backward, looking up at the burning mansion, then at me. I stood in the middle of the rain, completely untouched by a single drop of water. The rain veered away from my clothes, leaving me completely dry, while they sat soaked in mud, blood, and ashes. You wanted an apology, I said, looking down at Violet, who was hyperventilating, tears washing the dirt down her face. You wanted me to kneel. No. Henry, please. Violet sobbed, her arrogance completely shattered. She began slapping her own face frantically. I was wrong. Sister was wrong.
I
Didn't know. I didn't know. It's too late, I said cold-heartedly. I looked at my father, who was desperately trying to pull out his phone with trembling, blood-stained fingers to call his business contacts, his security teams, anyone. Dad. I called out to him. He shuddered and slowly looked up, his eyes full of terror. You love your fortune so much, I said softly. You framed your biological son just to protect your reputation and your company's stock value. So let's see how much your money is worth now. I took a deep breath and spoke the decree. Every contract the Shaw family has ever signed is null and void. Every bank account you own is frozen. Every crime, every bribe, every secret transaction you have ever committed in your life will be delivered directly to the Supreme Prosecutor's desk within 10 minutes. My father's phone suddenly buzzed violently in his hand. Then it vibrated again. And again. Dozens of notifications flooded the screen at once. Account frozen. Asset seized. Contract terminated. Warrant issued. His eyes bulged as he read the headlines popping up on the news apps. Breaking news. Shaw Group finances exposed in massive leak. Federal agents en route to arrest Chairman Shaw. My company? My father dropped the phone into the mud, his face gray. My 50 years of work, gone, all gone. He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot, and suddenly threw himself forward, banging his forehead repeatedly against the muddy ground at my feet. Henry.
My son.
My flesh and blood, he howled, his voice breaking into ugly, pathetic sob. I was wrong. I was blind. Jackie tricked us.
It was all Jackie.
Forgive your father. Please say the words. Tell them it's a mistake. Restore the accounts. You can make it happen with your voice, right? Save us. My mother also crawled over, grabbing at the bottom of my trousers with filthy hands, her makeup ruined, looking like a crazed beggar. Henry, I birthed you. I carried you for 9 months. She screamed, her voice cracking. I climbed those 399 steps for you. Even if I was wrong, I am still your mother. You can't be this cruel to your mother. Save Jackie.
He's dying.
Just say one word to heal him. I looked down at the three of them, the powerful, arrogant Shaw family now, kneeling in the mud, crying like stray dogs, begging the very boy they had kicked into the dark, cold storeroom 3 days ago. Jackie lay on the ground, his throat making wet whistling sounds as his breathing grew weaker. His eyes met mine, filled with a frantic, desperate plea
For mercy.
I slowly crouched down in front of Jackie. I pulled the silver amulet from his bloody shirt. The silver chain was snapped, the metal tarnished dark red from his blood. I wrapped it around my hand. Do you remember what you told me in the storeroom, Jackie? I whispered softly into his ear, so only he could hear. Jackie's lips trembled, but he couldn't speak through his swollen throat. You told me that even though I'm related by blood, in their eyes, I'm not even fit to carry your shoes. I smiled faintly. You were right. Blood means nothing
To them.
They loved you when you were convenient, and now. I stood up and looked at my father and mother. Look at him, I said to my parents.
He's dying.
If you give me the mansion, the company, and every asset you have left, maybe I'll think about saving his life. My father didn't hesitate for even a single second.
Take it.
Take it all, he yelled frantically, pointing at the burning house. The land, the money, the cars, everything is yours. Just don't let me go to prison. Tell the police I'm innocent. What about Jackie? I asked, looking at my mother. Don't you want to save your beloved, innocent adopted son? My mother looked at Jackie, then looked at the flames reflecting in my eyes.
The
sickening, fake love she had displayed for Jackie evaporated in an instant when faced with her own destruction. He lied to us, my mother screamed, pointing a hysterical finger at
Jackie.
He put the peanut powder in his own drink. He stabbed himself.
He's the
monster. Henry, kill him if you want. Just spare me. Tell the gods to spare your mother. Jackie's eyes widened in profound, utter shock. Tears of true despair finally leaked from his eyes as he heard the woman who had called him her precious boy 5 minutes ago throw him to the wolves without a second thought. I burst into laughter. It was a cold, bitter sound that drowned out the thunder above. Look at that, Jackie, I whispered down to him. This is the precious family you risked your life to steal from me. They don't love you.
They don't love me.
They only love themselves. I turned my back on them and began walking toward the front gates where Mary was waiting. Henry, where are you going? My father shrieked, crawling after me on his burned knees. You promised. You said if we gave you everything. I never promised anything, I said without turning around. From this day forth, my voice rang out, vibrating through the stone walls, through the mud, through their very bones. The Shaw family name shall be cursed. You will live the rest of your days in absolute poverty, exposed to the cold world you force me to endure. Every time you try to speak a lie, your tongue will burn like boiling tea. And Jackie. I paused at the iron gate, looking back over my shoulder one last time. Jackie will live, but he will never speak, never walk, and never hold a knife again. No, my mother's blood-curdling scream echoed through the night air as the final decree took effect. Jackie's wounds stopped bleeding, but his legs withered instantly, his vocal cords snapping locked forever. My father's phone burst into flames in his hand as police sirens began to wail in the distance, fast approaching the estate. I stepped through the iron gates. Mary was standing under the street lamp, holding an umbrella she had found by the guardhouse. She held it over my head, her eyes full of gentle, quiet warmth. Where are we going now, young master? She asked softly. I looked down at the tarnished silver amulet in my hand. Then, with a simple squeeze of my fingers, I crushed the metal into fine silver dust and let the night wind blow it away into the rain. I didn't need a seal anymore. I didn't need to hide. Somewhere far away, Mary, I said, a genuine smile touching my lips for the first time in 10 years. Somewhere where we can finally live in peace. Behind us, the grand Shaw mansion collapsed into a mountain of blazing rubble, buried under the sound of sirens screaming and the endless, cleansing rain. 3 months later, the city of Linford had completely forgotten the glory of the Shaw family.
What
was once a prominent dynasty of real estate moguls and socialites had vanished. Overnight, reduced to a dark cautionary tale whispered in high society drawing rooms. The media called it the Shaw collapse, a sudden, terrifying cascade of judicial raids, systemic financial fraud exposures, and inexplicable structural failures that leveled their multi-million-dollar estate in a single evening. In a dilapidated, damp basement apartment on the outskirts of the industrial district, the remaining fragments of that once great family huddled around a rusted kerosene heater. The room smelled of stale cabbage, mold, and unwashed bandages. Mr. Shaw, now stripped of his title, his fortune, and his dignity, sat on a broken wooden stool. His feet were wrapped in dirty rags, scarred perpetually from the molten iron that had seared into his flesh that night. Every step he took felt like walking on broken glass. Across from him, Mrs. Shaw was scrubbing laundry in a plastic basin, her hands red, cracked, and bleeding from the harsh industrial soap. The woman who used to spend tens of thousands of dollars on weekly spa treatments now looked like a ghost, her hair prematurely gray, her eyes hollowed out by sleepless nights and constant anxiety. In the corner lay Jackie. He was alive, just as Henry had decreed, but he was a prisoner inside his own broken shell. His legs hung limp and useless from his waist down. His mouth remained permanently half open, his tongue incapable of shaping words, reduced to making soft, pathetic clicking noises when he was hungry or needed his rags.
Changed.
The silver amulet he had lusted after was gone, and with it, any illusion of his bright future. Water. Mrs. Shaw muttered, lifting her head from the basin. Jackie needs water. Violet walked in, dragging her feet. She was wearing a threadbare, oversized coat she had pulled from a clothing donation bin. Her hands were bruised. She had spent the last 8 hours working at a fish market, gutting cod for minimum wage just to afford their daily bread. There is no water, Violet said, her voice dry and hoarse. The landlord shut off the pipes this morning because we owe 3 weeks of rent. That bastard. Mr. Shaw slammed his fist onto his knee, his eyes flaring with a shadow of his former rage. Does he know who I am? I am Richard Shaw. I built the financial district.
Arg.
Mr. Shaw suddenly grabbed his throat, dropping to the floor in agony. His tongue swelled instantly, blackening as if a red-hot iron had been pressed directly against it. Smoke literally drifted from his lips as he writhed in the dirt, clawing at his mouth. Every time you try to speak a lie, your tongue will burn like boiling tea. Violet didn't even bother to help him anymore. She watched her father scream in silent torture until the lie passed and the magical heat subsided, leaving him panting, drooling blood onto the concrete floor. Stop lying, Dad, Violet said coldly, her voice dead. You aren't Richard Shaw, the mogul anymore. You're just a homeless felon out on bail. Every time you pretend otherwise, he punishes you. Don't speak his name, Mrs. Shaw whimpered, pulling her knees to her chest, shivering hysterically. Don't speak of the devil. He might hear us. He doesn't care about us anymore, Mom. Violet chuckled bitterly, sitting down on a cold metal folding chair. We aren't worth his words. He gave us exactly what we deserved. She looked over at Jackie, who was making low, wet groaning sounds in the corner. Look at him, Violet whispered, her eyes filled with a terrifying, venomous resentment. We ruined our lives for this. We threw away our real brother, a boy who could command the heavens, for a fake, malicious parasite who poisoned himself just to get attention. Jackie's eyes filled with fear as Violet stared at him. He tried to crawl backward, but his withered legs dragged uselessly behind him like sacks of wet
sand.
If we had just treated Henry like a human being. Violet buried her face in her bruised hands, tears leaking through her filthy fingers. If we had just listened to Mary, if we had just loved him, we would be sitting in a palace.
Right now.
He would have given us the world. Instead, they were starving in the dark, waiting for the police to finalize their prison sentences. Suddenly, the rusted iron door of the basement blew inward with a loud bang. Heavy footsteps echoed down the concrete stairs. 3 men dressed in expensive, dark-tailored suits stepped into the dim room, followed by an elderly man, wearing long, traditional Taoist robes made of dark blue silk. Mr. Shaw scrambled backward in terror, hiding his ruined feet.
Who are
You, the bailiffs.
We don't have any money left.
Take whatever you want. The old man in the Taoist robe stepped forward. His eyes were sharp, bright, and filled with an ancient, terrifying intensity. Around his wrist hung a heavy string of black jade beads. He looked around the squalid basement, his gaze passing over the ruined family, before finally resting on the corner where Jackie lay. Where's the boy? The old man asked. His voice was deep, echoing through the small room like a heavy brass bell. Which boy? Mrs. Shaw stammered, trembling. The one born on the 3rd hour of the winter solstice, the old man said
Coldly.
The one who carries the voice of heaven. The one who broke the silver
seal.
Violet's heart skipped a beat. She stood up slowly. You're talking about Henry? The old man's eyes narrowed. So his name in this mortal realm was Henry.
He
raised his hand, and one of his suited men immediately stepped forward, holding out a black velvet box. The old man opened the box. Inside lay pieces of crushed, melted silver, the exact remnants of the amulet Henry had destroyed at the gates. I am Grandmaster Xian of the Celestial Peak, the old man declared, his eyes burning with an ominous light. 18 years ago, a child was born with the forbidden tongue, a mortal gifted with the ability to rewrite reality with a single breath. His power was too absolute, too terrifying for the mortal realm. So, I crafted the silver seal and gave it to a foolish woman who climbed my mountain, telling her it was a charm for luck. Mrs. Shaw's jaw dropped. You? You were the holy monk on the mountain? I gave you the seal to keep him silent. Grandmaster Xian's voice thundered, causing the dust on the ceiling to rain down on them. I told you to keep him safe, to keep him calm, to never let the metal leave his flesh. And what did you do, you blind, greedy swine? He pointed his wooden staff at Mrs. Shaw. You tore the seal away in wrath. You broke his heart, shattered his patience, and unleashed an unspeakable God into the world. Mrs. Shaw collapsed, sobbing hysterically. We didn't know. We didn't know. Where is he now? Grandmaster Xian demanded, stepping closer. Tell me where he
went.
A god walk among men without a leash will shatter the balance of this world. I must find him and bind his tongue forever, or erase him before he speaks. The world into ruin. Mr. Shaw's eyes suddenly lit up with a sick, desperate glint. He saw an opportunity, a way out. I know, Mr. Shaw scrambled forward, grabbing the bottom of the old monk's robe with his dirty hands. I know where he might be. He left with an old maid named Mary. She has an ancestral home in the countryside, a small village in the southern hills. He must have gone there.
Dad.
Violet shouted in disbelief. Are you out of your mind? You're trying to betray him again? Shut up, Violet. Mr. Shaw screamed, his eyes wild with madness. If this master captures Henry, he can break the curse on us. He can heal my feet.
He can.
Give us back our money. He turned back to Grandmaster Xian, bowing his head frantically into the dirt. Master,
take me with you.
I will lead you to him. Just promise you'll break the curse he put on my tongue and my fortune. Grandmaster Xian looked down at the pathetic man with utter disgust. A father who sells his son twice, the Grandmaster sneered. Truly, the human heart is more vile than any demon. Very well. Get up. You will guide us to the southern hills. For 100 miles away from the polluted, loud city of Linford lay the quiet, misty valley of Mount Blue Fall. The village was old, hidden deep within bamboo forests and crystal clear streams. It was a place untouched by the noise of modern ambition, where the air smelled of wet earth, wild orchids, and burning pine wood. On the slope of a gentle hill stood a simple, sturdy wooden house with a red tile roof. Surrounding it was a small garden filled with blooming medicinal herbs, wild roses, and vegetables. Henry sat on the wooden porch, wearing a plain cotton shirt and black trousers. He was holding a cup of warm green tea, watching the morning mist roll over the bamboo forest. The bleeding cuts on his forehead and palms were completely gone, leaving smooth, unblemished skin. His eyes, once full of hypervigilance, cold, dread, and hidden pain, were now as calm and clear as a mountain lake. Young master, Mary called out from the kitchen, stepping out onto the porch, holding a bamboo tray with fresh, steamed buns. The morning dew is heavy today. Put on this shawl. Thank you, Mary, Henry said with a soft smile, taking the warm bun. And, please don't call me young master anymore. I'm just Henry. Mary smiled gently, her face bright and healthy, looking 10 years younger than she had in the Shaw mansion. To me, you will always be the kind young boy who stopped to help an old woman carry heavy grocery bags when no one else looked my way. She sat down on the wooden bench beside him, taking a breath of the fresh mountain air. It's quiet here, she murmured happily. No shouting, no scheming, no cruel masters. It will stay quiet, Henry said softly. Over the past 3 months, Henry had learned to master the quiet authority within him. He rarely spoke unless necessary. When he did speak, it was never out of anger or malice, but to mend the simple things around him. When the village stream dried up during a heat wave, he walked to the spring and whispered, "Flow." The water burst forth, cold and sweet, filling the crops of the poor farmers. When an old farmer's sick ox was on the verge of death, Henry stroked its head and said, "Rest and be whole." The beast stood up, strong and healthy, nuzzling his hand. The villagers didn't know who he was or where he came from. They only knew that the quiet, handsome young man living with old Mary was a blessed soul, a gentle guardian who brought peace wherever he walked. For the first time in his 18 years of life, Henry felt at peace. He had found a family, not bound by blood, but by genuine kindness and loyalty. Suddenly, the birds in the bamboo forest stopped singing. A cold, unnatural wind swept through the valley, knocking the leaves from the
trees.
The clear sky above Mount Bluefall began to darken, heavy violet clouds swirling directly over the wooden house. Henry set his teacup down on the wooden table. The serene warmth in his eyes slowly faded, replaced by an ancient, terrifying stillness. "Mary," Henry said quietly, "go inside the house, lock the back door, and do not come out, no matter what you hear." Mary's smile vanished. She looked at the darkening sky, then at Henry's calm face, her heart seized by sudden anxiety. "Henry, is it them?" "Go inside, Mary," Henry repeated softly. "You will be safe within these walls." As soon as the words left his lips, an invisible, iridescent barrier flared too. Life around the wooden house, shimmering faintly in the cool air. Mary felt a wave of absolute warmth wash over her, gently pushing her back into the kitchen. The wooden door swung shut and locked itself tightly. Henry stood up slowly on the porch, smoothing his cotton shirt. At the edge of the bamboo forest, the bushes parted. 4 men in black suits stepped out, forming a perimeter. Behind them walked Mr. Shaw, limping heavily on his rag-bound feet, his face twisted in a sickening mix of fear and greedy triumph. And beside him stood Grandmaster Xian, his dark silk robes fluttering in the rising wind, his hands holding an ancient, bronze bell covered in crimson talismans. "Henry," Mr. Shaw yelled from 50 yards away, pointing his shaking finger at the house. "I found you, you ungrateful monster. You thought you could run away after destroying my life?" Henry didn't even glance at his father. His eyes rested entirely on the old Taoist monk. "Grandmaster Xian," Henry spoke, his voice carrying effortlessly across the clearing without raising his volume. "You walked 300 miles just to seek your death." Grandmaster Xian's eyes flashed with anger. He lifted his bronze bell, his thumbs pressing against the crimson talismans. "Child of cursed tongue," Xian declared, his voice echoing with spiritual pressure that made the surrounding bamboo trees bend and break. "You were born an anomaly, a mortal who possesses the speech of creation and destruction. You are a threat to the order of heaven." "The order of heaven?" Henry smiled faintly, taking a step down from the porch onto the dirt path. "Where was your order of heaven when my adoptive father threw an 8-year-old child into an icy river? Where was your order of heaven when the Shaw family dragged me across broken glass while I remained silent to protect them?" "The suffering of mortals is irrelevant," Xian shouted, raising his bell high into the air. "Power without control is chaos. 18 years ago, I sealed your voice. Today, I shall bind your soul." Xian violently shook the bronze bell. Ding! A piercing, shrill sound reverberated through the valley. Crimson light burst from the bell, transforming into hundreds of glowing, bloody chains that shot through the air, slithering toward Henry like venomous snakes. The ground exploded where the chains touched, tearing up rocks and dirt. Mr. Shaw laughed maniacally from behind a tree.
Yes. Kill him.
"Bind him. Break his mouth." Henry stood still in the middle of the clearing, watching the hundreds of crimson spiritual chains rush toward his face, his chest, his limbs. He didn't raise a weapon. He didn't build a shield. He simply opened his mouth and breathed out a single word. Silence.
Boom.
The word didn't just sound, it materialized as an absolute, crushing physical
force.
The moment the sound wave hit the crimson chains, the spiritual magic shattered. Like cheap glass, the crimson light dissolved into dust. The dark clouds above were instantly split in half by an invisible blade, revealing the bright blue sky and scorching sunlight above. The massive shockwave swept across the clearing, snapping dozens of massive bamboo trees in half like toothpicks. Grandmaster Xian's bronze bell exploded into sharp fragments, tearing into his hands. The old monk was blasted backward 20 feet, crashing heavily against a stone boulder, coughing up a fountain of dark blood. The 4 bodyguards in black suits were knocked unconscious instantly, buried under the falling bamboo. Mr. Shaw was thrown flat onto his back, his jaw dislocated from the sheer air pressure, screaming in soundless terror. Silence returned to the valley. Grandmaster Xian slumped against the boulder, his silk robe shredded, staring at the 18-year-old boy walking slowly toward him through the settling
dust.
"No, impossible," Xian gasped, his chest heaving, blood leaking from his nose and ears. "My supreme banishing bell, a sacred artifact of 300 years destroyed by a single word." Henry stopped 5 feet in front of the old monk. He looked down at him with Neither hatred nor anger, only a vast, terrifying emptiness. You spent your whole life studying talismans and spiritual relics, Henry said, softly. You thought my power came from a curse. You thought it could be sealed by a piece of silver. Henry leaned down, staring into the old monk's trembling eyes. The silver didn't seal my power, Xian, Henry whispered. It was my own heart that sealed it. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to have a family. I held my tongue because I believed in human goodness. Henry turned his head slightly, glancing at Mr. Shaw, who was frantically crawling backward through the dirt, trying to hide behind a bush. But they proved to me that my silence was useless, Henry continued, his voice echoing like an eternal law. My silence didn't bring them peace. It only brought out their absolute evil. Grandmaster Xian shuddered, feeling the terrifying, absolute presence radiating from the boy. This wasn't a magician. This wasn't a sorcerer. This was a walking deity, a force of nature that no mortal law or ancient spell could ever hold. What? What are you going to do to us? Xian stammered, his pride completely shattered. Henry looked up at the bright sky, feeling the warm sunlight on his face. I won't kill you, Xian, Henry said. Death is too simple. You love your sacred order, your grand titles, and your spiritual arrogance so much. Henry raised his hand and spoke the decree. From this moment on, Grandmaster Xian, your spiritual cultivation is dissolved. Every spell you have ever learned will vanish from your mind. You will become a blind, deaf beggar, wandering the earth to feel the true suffering of the mortals you deemed irrelevant.
No.
Spare my cultivation. No. Xian screamed, but his voice abruptly cut off. His eyes turned milky white as his sight vanished. His ears bled as his hearing
Died.
The powerful aura surrounding his body collapsed like a popping balloon, leaving him a frail, senile, broken old man lying in the mud, clawing blindly at the air in silence. Henry turned away from the ruined monk and walked toward his father. Mr. Shaw was weeping hysterically, his dislocated jaw hanging loose, drool and tears mixing with the dirt on his face. He bumped against a tree trunk, unable to run any further on his ruined feet. He looked up at Henry, his eyes filled with pure, unadulterated horror.
He tried
To speak, to beg, to plead for mercy, but only wet, gurgling sounds came out of his mouth. Henry stood over his biological father, looking down at the man who had thrown boiling tea on his face, who had called him a cold-blooded monster, who had sold him out twice without a shred of hesitation. Dad. Henry called him for the final time. Mr. Shaw shook like a leaf in a hurricane, squeezing his eyes shut, waiting for the final strike. I won't waste another word on you, Henry said softly. You came here seeking a fortune and a cure. Instead, you will take your grandmaster back to the city. Henry pointed a finger toward the mountain path, leading out of the valley. Walk, Henry commanded. You will carry this blind old man on your back, step by step, all 400 miles back to Linford. You will not stop, you will not sleep, until you reach the gates of the prison that awaits you. Mr. Shaw's body moved against his will. Despite the blinding agony in his feet, despite his shattered jaw, his hands reached out, forcibly hoisting the limp, heavy body of Grandmaster Xian onto his frail shoulders. Tears of unbearable pain and despair poured down Mr. Shaw's face as his legs began to move, forced by an absolute, unbreakable command to march down the rough, rocky mountain trail, step by bloody step, toward his eternal retribution. Henry watched them disappear into the mist of the bamboo forest, their fading groans swallowed by the quiet rustle of the wind. The sun rose high into the afternoon sky, bathing Mount Blue Fall in golden
warmth.
The dark clouds were gone. The broken bamboo trees slowly began to straighten, their leaves rustling happily as if the land itself were exhaling a deep sigh of relief. Henry walked back up the dirt path to the wooden house. He waved his hand gently. Restore. The crushed dirt, the broken rocks, and the shattered porch instantly shifted and smoothed over. The wood repaired itself, the flowers in the garden bloomed brighter than before, and the air returned to its sweet, crisp scent of pine and orchids. The iron lock on the kitchen door clicked open. Mary stepped out onto the porch, holding her apron tightly. She looked around the tranquil garden, then at Henry, who was walking up the steps with a gentle, relaxed smile. Henry, Mary whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Are they gone? They're gone, Mary, Henry said softly, taking a seat on the wooden bench and picking up his teacup, which was still warm. They won't ever come back. No one will ever bother us again. Mary looked at the young man. She knew he possessed power that could overturn kingdoms, destroy armies, or rewrite the fate of the entire world. Yet here he sat, enjoying a quiet cup of green tea in a wooden house, asking for nothing more than a peaceful morning. "What will you do now, Henry?" she asked softly, sitting down beside him.
With
"A voice like yours, you could be a king. You could rule everything." Henry took a sip of the warm tea, looking out over the endless green hills of the valley, where wild birds were singing and the clear stream was sparkling in the sunlight. He smiled, a real, bright, beautiful smile that carried no shadow of his bitter
past.
"I don't want to be a king, Mary," Henry said, his voice as soft as the morning
Breeze.
"I spent my whole life keeping quiet out of fear. Now I want to use my voice for something better." He turned to look at Mary, his clear eyes reflecting the golden light of the sun. "I want to speak health to the sick. I want to speak warmth to the cold.
And
Most of all." Henry leaned back against the wooden pillar of the porch, closing his eyes, letting the quiet serenity of the world wrap around him like a warm blanket. "I want to enjoy the quiet." The wind swept through the valley, carrying his gentle words across the mountains, touching every leaf, every river, every living soul with a subtle, eternal blessing of peace. And in that quiet wooden house, far away from the cruelty of the world, the boy who could kill with a word finally found his home.